Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second of the UTMB Hometown Science Talk series. We have a really informative talk for you today. I'm Virginia Dickinson, also known as Xenon Darrow in the virtual world, and I am your host for this talk. I do have a few announcements that I want to make before we begin. After the talk, check out the campus. We have the Keeler exhibit. These are artistic anatomy drawings from the late 1800s. At the top of the arena stairs, you should try our treadmills and click the sign and learn how exercising in Second Life might motivate you to exercise in real life. If you didn't see Old Red being built in the 1890s, and yeah, I feel pretty old today, but I certainly didn't see it in the 1890s, head over to the virtual Old Red building that our designer, Teresa Johnson, is constructing for our virtual campus. It's quite a work of art, and it's directly across from us, I believe. And also, you want to check out UTMB's virtual lab, our showcase for using virtual worlds in science education. You can reach each of these areas by clicking on the corresponding picture on the teleport boards located throughout the campus. And walking and flying are options as well. Today's speaker is Victor Serpina. Victor is a medical doctor and is introducing the key concepts of lifestyle medicine. This includes essential factors that are related to motivation and sustainable change, lifestyle-related health factors, and will also address essential aspects of health promotion and prevention. This includes nutrition, physical fitness, stress management, sleep, mood, injury reduction, medications, and supplements. Dr. Serpina is the director of the UTMB Medical Student Education Program, AWD, and Laura Nell Nicholson Family Professor of Integrative Medicine, Professor of Family Medicine, and a University of Texas Distinguished Teaching Professor. Welcome today, Dr. Victor Serpina.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm so happy to be here. It's a beautiful day, and enjoying the ocean and such. I think we're going to have a very fun talk on lifestyle medicine. So first of all, maybe you've never even heard the term lifestyle medicine. This is something that has really evolved over a number of years and coalesced as a field. The talk that I'm giving today is really kind of a summary of a book that you see up there, Lifestyle Medicine, by Gary Eggers and his partners from Australia. It was printed in 2008, but the topics and the content are very current. The general definition that they use of lifestyle medicine is this application of environmental, behavioral, medical, and motivational principles to the management of lifestyle-related health problems in the clinical setting. What is maybe a surprise to you is that at least 70% of the reasons people attend the doctor is often related to how their lifestyle is. We might think it might be genetics or infection or pain or diabetes or heart disease, but all of these things have a link with lifestyle and lifestyle choices. And that's what we really want to bring you about today, is that it's not, the medical encounter is not primarily about the doctor. It's about what the patient understands about what they can do for their life and to improve their health, not necessarily taking a pill, or that may be useful, but really becoming an active participant in the healing process rather than simply coming in and saying, well, fix me. So this is a core principle of lifestyle medicine. We're trying to modify behavior and lifestyle in the areas that we know are put you at risk for diseases, but this requires you as the patient to be an active partner in this process. And as you can see here, this doctor is asking this patient, are you eating properly and getting plenty of exercise? Obviously, he's not getting too much himself. And it's something we've been working at our medical school now with a new program called the Physician Healer Track to really encourage our students to practice what they preach, to be active participants in their own self-care and not simply passive recipients of medical care when they get sick. So we want them to be good role models, as well as understanding how hard it is sometimes for people to make changes in their lifestyle. Will Rogers once said, "Be a good listener. You never learn much from talking." And one of the key aspects of the physician interview that we're trying to shift here in the lifestyle uh, medicine context is really understanding where the patient is coming from, listening to them, understanding their point of view, what stage of change they're at, what motivates them, what they can do, what may have happened to you or other people in the medical encounter at times is you've got a little mini lecture, you're told to do this or that or the other thing, and this might have been really unrealistic for you at your stage or situation in life. So, like Will Rogers, the first thing we want to do is this quote: "What people really need is a good listening to." And so that's where the start of good lifestyle medicine begins, is really understanding where people are coming from. To do that, we use the core principles of motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing is a process where we really try to understand the patient's point of view, where they're at, and help to make either conscious to them or create a discrepancy between where they are and where they want to be. So you might ask them a question, okay, so you want to be working for losing, say, 10 pounds. What are you doing right now to do that? And they'll say, well, not that much. Or what did you have for lunch? Well, I went to McDonald's. Are you doing any fitness exercise? And so kind of pointing out for them, helping them understand that their current behavior isn't really getting them to where they want to get. So that's kind of a second step, is then finding why they're not doing what they would like to do to achieve their goals, and helping reduce any ambivalence they have about getting to those goals. And we all have resistances about change. And this is a key aspect of motivational interviewing, is helping the patient recognize those discrepancies, reduce ambivalence, and then also acknowledging that change occurs in stages. So let's say you're a smoker and you know you should quit. The doctor would advise you to quit. Everybody would tell you possibly. But honestly, you're not really thinking about it. So this puts you in the pre-contemplation stage. You haven't even considered possibilities. I've always had this smoking habit. My mother gave me cigarettes when I was a kid while I was folding the laundry because she was a heavy smoker, and I just couldn't possibly quit. So at that stage, there's really not much movement towards change that a person can make. And we have to acknowledge that in the motivational interviewing process and say, okay, well, that's where you're at right now, and maybe later you'll be somewhere else. Why don't you get back to me on that? And then the next visit, you might bring it up, and hopefully the patient has maybe started to think about it. And this is the contemplation stage. You know, doc, I've been thinking about what you said, and, you know, my aunt died recently of COPD and lung cancer, and, you know, maybe I think I might want to change that smoking behavior at some point. So great, that's the next step. And then preparation. All right, so what do you do to reinforce success? Well, maybe you want to get rid of your smoking materials, your ashtrays. You want to possibly get a prescription to help you, or a patch or a gum or something. And you decide, I'm going to set a quit date. Okay, that's going to be a week from Thursday. I'm going to quit on Valentine's Day or something like that as a gift to my honey. And that's the day you take action. And then that action then needs to be sustained or maintained over a period of time. And that ends up in transformation. Now, many times, of course, we've all tried and failed to do things that we wanted to change. And that's kind of how that little staircase goes over there. Which step have you reached today? I won't do it. I can't do it. I want to do it. How do I do it? I'll try to do it. I can do it. I will do it. Yes, I did it. Wow. But many times we regress and kind of go back and forth between these changes, between these stages before we're finally successful. But acknowledging where we are on that staircase helps us to move up it eventually. And it's important to forgive ourselves and not kind of blame ourselves if we don't progress as quickly as we think we ought to. That's the process of change, is slow and steady and often just repetitive perseverance and hanging in there, picking yourself up when you fall. Let's switch gears a little bit to another important core and fundamental part of lifestyle medicine, which is movement or exercise. This is something that we know is an essential part of a healthy life. Our bodies are meant to move. People that don't move not only suffer from obesity and heart problems and diabetes, depression, but after a while they can't move. They become so deconditioned. So some regular activity on a daily basis, we think maybe 150 minutes a week seems to be the place where most medical conditions seem to be positively affected. That is, if you're exercising 150 minutes a week, think of it, it's maybe 20 minutes a day, really cuts down the risk of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, and all-cause mortality. And the 20 minutes doesn't even need to be in a row. It can be in little 10-minute blocks. Now, I always tell people if they haven't been exercising, my old Polish proverb, which is start off slow, then ease off. And the reason is people decide maybe they want to get active and then they get all excited, go to the gym, get a new bicycle or jogging shoes or something, and they start off and then they injure themselves. And then they're out of condition for a month or 2 months or whatever. So we tend to overdo ourselves if we haven't been exercising. A good way to think about this is what's called the FIT RX. This is the prescription for exercise. F stands for frequencies. How often should we exercise? Is it daily? Is it 2 or 3 times a week? Intensity can go from low to moderate to high. Mild exercise just kind of raises the blood pressure or pulse a little bit, whereas high will raise it quite a bit and you'll be sweating. And you should definitely start off with low to moderate exercise if you haven't been active. The type of exercise, aerobic resistance, balance, and flexibility, we actually should mix this up. One type of exercise only doesn't really meet your body's needs for total wellness. So aerobic is where you work on your cardiovascular health. Resistance is strengthening with, say, weights or bands. Balance and flexibility, things like yoga, tai chi, or stretching exercises help actually prevent injuries, prevent falls, and it's an area that's often neglected in the exercise prescription. And then the time, part of the FIT prescription is time, and I already mentioned, 20, 30 minutes a day, 40 minutes, whatever it is, but aiming for about 150 minutes total in a week. And people at all ages and all stages of fitness can exercise. One of my favorite forms of prescriptive exercise is water therapy. And I find that that's a really great program for people that have arthritis, that are overweight. You don't need to be a swimmer. You can get into a swimming pool with arthritis of the knees or back. And we've got a tremendous program here in Galveston called Tideways, which has started off as a rehab center for brain-injured people. And they've opened it up for patients for regular physical therapy in the pool, or aqua therapy. And it's even covered by major insurances. So that's another nice way to get your exercises in the pool. Of course, you can swim if you want to, too. That's another aerobic form. Of course, after movement, we have to think about nutrition as a component of our health. And most of us, unfortunately, are following the so-called SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is high in glycemic, high fat, high sugary foods and snacks. And this is why we have an epidemic of obesity in this country. 65% of women and 75% of men are currently overweight or obese in the United States. And a big part of that is not just inactivity, but the kind of foods that we're eating. This group of foods here you see pictured are what we call the superfoods, and I'll go into them in a little more detail. But when it comes to eating, here's some basic tips. as much as you can, cook at home. When you cook at home, you are in control of portion size, you're in control of the ingredients, you're in control of the amount of fat, and just the mix of foods. I know I have to travel a lot. It's always challenging for me when I'm on the road to really eat well because restaurant food, they tend to have 2 or 3 times the portion that you probably need, and they don't always prepare it in the way that you want. So if you learn to cook at home, and it's really become my kind of hobby, I get home at the end of a day at the seeing patients or teaching, and I just take a break to make a salad or cook a soup or grill some salmon or something. It's really a lot of fun. And when I say cooking at home, I don't mean taking something out of the freezer and throwing in the microwave, but really cooking from scratch, taking basic ingredients, fruits, vegetables, grains, lean sources of protein like salmon, turkey, chicken, healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, and those are kind of the core of what you do. There's a number of great cookbooks out. I saw one recently from the Miraval resort called Mindful Eating. Andy Weil's got an excellent book called True Foods from his restaurant. There's lots and lots of vegetarian cookbooks if you like, but getting a cookbook and then taking it off the shelf and actually practicing recipes is a really good way to get into this and eating better. I've also noticed there's a lot of YouTube and TED Talks on different things. I was interested in a kind of a staple in Asia. It's called dal, D-A-L. It's made out of lentils as a base, and it's kind of a stew, and you can move in and out of all kinds of vegetables or meats with that, and it's really an amazing, healthy food. And I talked to some of my colleagues who are from that part of the country, and part of the world, I'd never eaten dal until I was on a recent cruise ship, and they had it in the Asian section. And there were some websites that they shared, and there was like infinite number of varieties of dal and little videos on how to make it and such. So it's just an example of adding something new to your diet that's healthy that maybe you haven't eaten before. This book by Steve Pratt is called Superfoods RX. Steve's an ophthalmology friend of mine. He started studying nutrition when he found that certain people that he did operations on their eyes healed better than others. He also found certain people got less cataracts or macular degeneration or other retinal problems if they ate healthier diets. So I went into a great deal of research about nutrition and found there's about 14 major food groups that we know are most healthy for you. And I tell people, if you can eat out of these food groups, whether you're trying to prevent heart disease or diabetes, whether you're trying to lose weight, whether you just want to have a very active, healthy lifestyle and be sure that you're getting all the nutrients you need, try to eat 80% of your foods off of this list. You know, sure, you can go out and grab a hamburger or pizza sometime, but if you're eating the superfoods as kind of your core area, this is really the best for you. So we look at the bean group, which is really a great form of plant protein. All the berries have rich antioxidants in them that help protect eye health, vascular health, heart health. The broccoli group, extremely useful for cancer prevention, liver health, and general digestive health. Under oats are the whole grains, and I really emphasize the whole grains are going to tend to be brown. Try to avoid eating things that are white, like white rice and white potatoes and white flour, from which all of the really healthy elements have been milled away. The citrus group under oranges, pumpkin has a group that's very high in vitamin A. Citrus group with vitamin C. Salmon group these are the kind of cold water fish in general, and these are high in omega-3 fatty acids. Herring, trout, sea bass, oysters, clams, halibut. And canned salmon is actually always available year-round. It makes a very nice sandwich or salad when you can't get fresh. I try to avoid the farmed salmon or Atlantic salmon because they're not quite as high in omega-3 fatty acids as the Alaskan variety. And then finally, we've got the soy group, which are very useful as another source of protein and alternative to dairy products. Spinach group, now this is something that's really gotten a lot of take these recently, is kale. I just saw a recipe my son sent me from cooked kale with onions and garlic, and it's just a fabulous way to eat kale. You can also make a salad with just olive oil and a little bit of lemon juice to soften the kale, some ground pepper and garlic. So playing with some of these, and some of these are traditional. So if you're African American, you may have eaten turnip greens or mustard greens. If you're Asian, bok choy maybe is more on your list. Collard, Swiss chard, kale, all colorful, deep green vegetables, lots of antioxidants, lots of vitamins. Besides water, tea is the most drunk beverage in the world, and has a well-proven groups of phytochemicals that are called epigallocatechins that have been shown to protect against cancer, infectious disease, vascular problems. So tea is very helpful. Don't add a lot of sugar to it. Green or black tea, iced or heated, either way. If you don't like the caffeine, once you brew your tea, just squeeze a bag out after the first cup, throw the water out, and then throw the tea bag back in another cup of water, and you'll still get the beneficial chemicals without the caffeine. And we've got tomatoes, all the kind of red type of foods, lots of beta carotene, other helpful antioxidants there as well. Turkey, ground breast of turkey is a particular favorite at our house. We use it instead of ground beef for many dishes, from meatloaf to burgers to soups. Skinless chicken breast, also very lean. Nuts, fabulous source of protein and minerals. Keep in mind that nuts, you should eat them by the handful, not the bagful. One handful of nuts is probably about 150 calories. Try to avoid the ones that have been cooked in a lot of oil or with a lot of salt, but some nuts every day is very helpful for you. And yogurt as a dairy product. Kefir, many people haven't heard of. It's kind of a liquid yogurt. It's a Middle Eastern product that's available like at Kroger's. Major grocery stores now have kefir. It's a very nice breakfast drink and has helpful probiotics as well as the protein sources. So let's switch gears a little bit from the physical to the mental. One of my favorite psychiatrists of all time, Carl Jung, who was a contemporary with Sigmund Freud, said the separation of psychology from the premises of biology is purely artificial, because the human psyche lives in indissoluble union with the body. So we know this is kind of becoming more accepted. Here's a special issue of Time magazine that looked at meditation and other mind-body exercises to help with healing. And this is particularly helpful in our current society where we see so much stress. Pretty much anybody who comes into my office, I ask them if they're under stress, and they would say yes. So we all have stress in different degrees. There's a kind of a positive stress, or eustress that we call it, that is kind of a balance between being overstressed and not being challenged enough. I kind of use this like a bell-shaped curve of a light bulb. At one side is unlit, and at the other side is burned out. And at the top of the curve is the light bulb is just glowing perfectly well. So finding that balance of stress in our lives. And if you feel stressed, there's several different ways to manage it, many different ways to manage it. But just one way that I looked at that was in this lifestyle textbook was the ACE method. So you analyze the stress and see what you can do to change it, and then evaluate after the change how that has actually worked. And then there was the 5 R's: reduce it, just get rid of it; remove it, give it to somebody else to do if you don't need to be doing something; replace it or delay it; rethink it, discuss it, and kind of figure out, are you really looking at the situation or what you're doing in the right way, and does it really need to be the stress that it is in your life? or reframe it and then kind of drop it out of your consciousness. So this little zebra is getting a little bit unfurled here from his stripes because of too much stress. So that's just a touch on that, and being conscious of your stress is the first part of really creatively managing it. Because if you're not aware of it, you tend to react to it. You might find yourself irritable or out of sorts or fatigued or not sleeping well. And managing your stress is an important part of lifestyle medicine. Of course, one way to manage it is meditation. This is a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. He says to meditate is to be aware of what is going on. And this meditation doesn't need to be complex. It can be just as simple as sitting in the room by yourself for 15 or 20 minutes, just focusing on your breathing and just letting your mind quiet down. But as you do that, you become more and more aware of your own feelings, your own thoughts, of tensions within your body, stress that you might be having. A particularly engaging component of lifestyle medicine that I like is called positive psychology. And of course, there's lots of negative psychology, which just means we're trying to treat diseases like anxiety and depression. And those are important. We're going to talk about them. But this, the idea of positive psychology is being explored more and more, and it's something that we have found to be a creative element in people's health. I was just reading some research this morning about this idea of using gaming and avatars like this program to practice kind of an alternative attitude in your life. You can do that online and then actually have it translate more and more into your real life. So sometimes people tend to like put happy people kind of down and say, oh geez, what are you so happy about? The rest of us are miserable. And so there's this group effect where you really have to rise above it. It's kind of like the story of the crab bucket. If you have a bucket full of crabs and one is trying to crawl out, just as he's ready to escape, the other crabs will grab him and drag him back down. And so that's a little bit where the science of happiness has to kind of help you to break away from groupthink. So here's one happy egg and a whole bunch of them. My granddaughter saw this morning and she said, I'm the yellow egg. So, and she is. She's a little sunshine type of person. So these are just some basic adaptive mechanisms of good mental health, sublimation, altruism, suppression, anticipation, humor. All of those are key to dealing with our stresses and managing to maintain our positivity in the face of life's ongoing struggles. I have found without question that trying to maintain gratitude or an attitude of gratitude in every situation is particularly helpful for me and for those that I'm with. As we think about what we have and are grateful for it rather than what we don't have, we tend to draw more of that, of what we do want, into our lives instead of pushing it away. So maintaining gratitude and thankfulness in as many situations in life as you can. And there's just a little ABC for good mental health: act, belong, and commit. Act, maintaining physical activity, cognitive activity, social activity, belonging to social groups and not isolating yourself. And then there's nothing better than committing, taking up a cause and volunteering, just kind of getting out of your own head and your own space to make you feel good about yourself and make a positive impact in the world. Just another Time magazine cover, so you can see where it says, is this new age mumbo jumbo, not for millions of Americans who meditate for health and well-being. And so this was another cover issue. One of the kind of most common problems that keep people from being well is anxiety. It's been defined as a thin stream of fear trickling through the mind, and if encouraged, cuts a channel into which all of the thoughts are drained. So anxiety is really a form of fear, and it kind of sucks us into this channel of negative thinking. This little guy is saying, am I going to die? I have a mental illness now. I'm so scared. Can I get medication? Things like that. He's kind of putting himself into this negative track. Now, medication can be useful for anxiety, but my first lifestyle approach that I use for patients is recommending this relaxation and stress reduction workbook by Martha Davis. This book is sold nearly 1 million copies. It's in its 6th edition right now by New Harbinger Press. And it has multiple chapters on methods, everything from meditation to progressive muscle relaxation, biofeedback, worry control, refuting irrational thoughts, breathing techniques, and so forth to manage stress. So this is, if you feel anxious and you feel stressed, this is a really useful self-help tool in the lifestyle space. And here's some other tips that you can do to deal with anxiety. If you're really worried about something, think about, will this matter to me a year from now? As I mentioned, learning some of those relaxation or meditation techniques. Doing something good for someone else, practicing random acts of kindness, doing just one thing at a time. We all tend to multitask, and we've got 4 or 5 things going on. I was watching Ellen set the computer up over here. I can't believe how amazing she was doing, but it's often stressful trying to do 2 or 3 or 4 things at a time, as we often do. I mentioned earlier about being grateful, thinking of what you have, not what you want. And then also having a positive attitude towards problems that we face. Think of the problem as a learning opportunity, something that is actually our teacher. We may be already too late, Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker comes in looking like a skeleton to see the doctor. He's not looking too healthy. And this is a major factor in our society right now. There's a huge percentage of depression that we see in clinical practice, and it goes from very mild level, kind of low-grade chronic depression to suicidal thoughts and ideation. And it's something we really need to get a handle on. I had a patient yesterday in the office. She'd had a heart attack about 6 weeks ago and was quite depressed. And the interesting data about that is if you have depression after a heart attack, you're about 40% more likely to die of a heart-related problem in 6 months than if you're not depressed. So we set her up with some counseling, put her on a low dose of a antidepressant medication. Certainly we need to get a handle on stressors when you're depressed. Self-help and self-seeking can be useful. The medication maybe isn't a way of life, but certainly can be a window of opportunity to help people who are stressed. A common problem in our society in terms of lifestyle are addictions. And there's a tendency to focus a little bit on these as chemical problems, but they're really personal problems. People get addicted for a variety of things, genetic issues, stress certainly is it, trauma, but the point is that changing an addiction is a very challenging process, and it's often stimulated by concerns about health, money, relationships. So if you have someone that isn't addicted to a substance, could even be gambling, as this cartoon talks about, having them go through, remember the motivational interviewing steps, what is it about it that's not getting them where they want to go, and what kind of help can they get. Self-help groups like AA, Narcotics Anonymous, and such have been very helpful for addiction problems, and certainly something you should talk to your health professional about if you have a problem in this area. This is a meditating baby, one of my favorite pictures. Looks like a little Buddha. And this introduces the topic of sleep. And sleep is something we kind of take for granted unless we're not getting it. It touches on every aspect of our physiology and psychology and how we interact with the world. And people that don't sleep or don't sleep well, often it's underdiagnosed. It can actually cause medical problems, or it can be caused by medical problems like, say, sleep apnea or anxiety can be causes of sleep disorder. But also poor sleep can lead to obesity and heart disease, diabetes, mood disorders, fatigue, and accidents. we don't necessarily jump on the hypnotic train as the first approach to dealing with sleep. We try to deal with the psychological and medical causes that may be involved, trying relaxation techniques, botanical medications, melatonin can be useful rather than taking prescription drugs. Another thing that's very interesting is this concept of sleep debt. We need a certain number of hours of sleep. It's been well documented, somewhere between 7.5 and 8.5 hours are needed on a nightly basis of good sleep. And if we don't get that, within a few days we develop this sleep debt, and it needs to be caught up, otherwise our health suffers. They have done studies of medical interns who were up for 36 hours in a row and not gotten any sleep, and they did some driving testing on them, and they found that their driving was impaired as much as if they were over the legal limit in alcohol in their blood. So sleep debt definitely needs to be paid back. So if you don't get good sleep one night, be sure to make up for it if you can, as soon as you can within the week. And just be aware of your own biorhythm. Some people sleep shorter periods of time. Some people have to get to bed earlier and wake up late, and kind of work with that in terms of optimizing your sleep health. A healthy sex life is certainly part of a healthy lifestyle, and we find increasingly problems with this can cause very big concerns among both men and women. We're seeing increasing amounts of erectile dysfunction in men. We think some of this may be due to environmental causes. I know Dr. Watson's going to talk about some of the effects of estrogenizing pollutants in the environment, like plastics and chemicals in the environment. But also people that are obese, have diabetes, depression, smoke too much, drink too much alcohol. This can affect their sexual function, male or female. Always looking at your relationships and making sure you're communicating well, that you're not sexually satisfied because the relationship is a problem rather than just a physical function. Safe sex is something we try to emphasize, always being aware of the risk of lifelong sexually transmitted diseases like hepatitis or AIDS or syphilis, and this is something to start educating our children even in high school and before about. And then, of course, medication, hormone levels, all these play into how active you can be or how functional you are sexually, and it's something to discuss with your doctor, because side effects of medication or inadequate levels of hormones can definitely be a role in unhealthy or in unsatisfying sexual life. Safety and accidents certainly kind of seem like a major thing that we don't talk about too much. Of course, we do a certain amount of things, like we've really increased the use of seat belts and child seats and so forth. But accidents aren't always accidents. They're just kind of, sometimes people are inattentive. I worked in emergency rooms for many, many years and found that people that came in with accidents, there was 3 general categories. One was hurry, one was worry, and one was altered states of consciousness. So they were either in a hurry to get somewhere and fell or slipped, or they were worried about something, they were distracted, weren't paying attention to what was going on, and altered states of consciousness. They were sleepy, they were drunk, they were intoxicated in some way. So being aware of the causes of accidents can really reduce the risk. This particularly is important as we age. People that are older will tend to have more falls, and the accidents tend to be more serious. Assessing mobility, medications in the home, suicide risks. Some accidents really are just kind of subtle attempts at suicide. Making sure that sleep and substances aren't an issue, and looking at the environment in which we work, play, makes a important contribution to accidents. Then kind of the final big area that we are becoming aware of is how connected we are with our planet and with everything that's going on in our world. And as I mentioned the concern about pollutants affecting male testosterone function, and Dr. Watson's going to talk about how it affects estrogen function in females. There's increasing awareness that we are in this interdependent network with the environment around us, and doing what we can in that context to keep our home and homes and our workplaces human-friendly, clean air, water, clean food, starts with global awareness, but also local awareness and local action. And this is something that's a big aspect. We talked earlier about volunteering and being involved and contributing. This is certainly an area where, as the world goes forward, we need to have more consciousness of how big of a risk environmental factors can be to good lifestyle. So here are some general principles of lifestyle medicine, kind of summarizing what we've gone over so far, that you might want to just take on one or more of these at a time. Generally, taking on one thing at a time is enough. As Mark Twain said, or he said, habit is habit, not to be thrown out the window by any man, but coaxed down the stairs one step at a time. So if you have any of these that are like not good habits, just try and change one at a time. So we know that smoking is definitely a health hazard. How much we eat has become basically a pandemic. We've got childhood obesity now that is really such a problem. These kids are going to grow up with heart disease and diabetes in their 20s and 30s. Don't drink too much or too little alcohol. There's some benefit for alcohol intake in terms of cardiovascular risk. They recommend having a couple alcohol-free days a week. Trying to avoid anxiety and depression or having those treated. Managing stress. Don't do too many drugs of all kinds. And this includes pharmacological drugs. I shudder when a patient comes in and they're on 8 or 10 prescription drugs from multiple doctors with multiple potential interactions. So we're always trying to cut those down. Safe sex, eating breakfast. Breakfast is important because it sets your metabolism going, and it's the healthiest way to start a good day is to eat a good healthy breakfast. And a lot of us might feel too rushed to eat anything more than a cup of coffee and something quick. But it's really an important part of your weight control too, because if you don't eat breakfast, by lunch you're starved and you eat too many calories. Regular activity, we mentioned sleep, stretching, and some kind of strength work every other day. We didn't mention this area of skin care. Dry skin is an unhealthy skin, so using moisturizer, we're seeing a lot of skin cancers as people have now kind of gone through years and years of the fads of sun tanning and unawareness of the risks of too much sun exposure. Air conditioning, I don't think we could possibly deal without it in Galveston, but I think there's some benefit to spending as much time outdoors as you can in terms of just your body's adjustment to temperature and humidity and such. Chewing gum can help reduce teeth problems as well as heartburn and reflux. Flossing regularly, obviously your dentist tells you that, and moderation in all things, including moderation. And if you can't remember any of those, just remember Hippocrates' statement, which was, avoid too much food and too little toil. Hippocrates is a Greek philosopher about 500 BC, and he was the founder of modern medicine, and this was kind of his simple approach to a healthy life. That was, 2,500 years ago, and some of those other factors that we just looked at could certainly be, so back those up. Don't go backwards.
It's taken just a minute.
Some of those factors like that could be definitely part of his recommendation. So, and you don't want to be this guy, Hiram Dudson, member of the placebo group. So you want to be an active participant in your healthy lifestyle. Don't leave it up to your doctor or your researcher to kind of decide which way you're going to go in terms of your daily choices. And remember, humor because those who cannot laugh at themselves leave the job for others. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Serpina. That was great. Yeah, and Teresa, we have some questions. Okay, do doctors see more depression now than they expect in the population? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, I think we're getting more astute at recognizing depression. I think there's a number of screening instruments we use. There's one called the PHQ-9, very simple 9-question interview that patients can take, and we can categorize their depression from no depression to mild, moderate, severe, or very severe. Now, whether we're seeing more because there is more, I don't really know the statistics on that. It just seems like people are more aware of it. And I think part of it is this whole mental illness space has been a stigma for so many years, and people have not felt free to talk about it. I think there's been, with more publicity and medical information and availability of effective medications, that people are more willing to talk about their depression. So they may be coming out of the woodwork when they may not have seen them before. That being said, we do know that certain lifestyle factors, and I think certainly the diet is a factor, lack of activity is a factor, stress are factors. Those things, and poor sleep, all of those, if untreated, can certainly cause depression. Gentle Heron, what seems to be the worst thing? Let's see. The worst thing that a normal, healthy person does at various ages that impacts their health as they're older. Let's see. Can I see that one again?
It's what seems to be the worst thing that a normal, healthy person does at various ages that impacts their health. Oops, I just messed up.
Yeah.
What seems to be the worst thing that a normal, healthy person does at various ages that impacts their health as an older person?
You know, that's a great question. And we have kind of this concept now of long latency illness. Okay, so if you say cut yourself or you are exposed to strep throat or something, you have an immediate illness or injury. The thing that we're recognizing now with, for example, the epidemic of dementia and Alzheimer's is that people's choices early in life have such long latency. So if you are eating poorly, you're having foods that are high in inflammatory chemicals, fried foods, trans fats, high glycemic foods, and so forth. You're not physically active, you're not mentally active. That may not affect you very, very much when you're 20, 30, 40, or even 50. But then those kinds of choices, chronic stress is another one. They aggregate over a period of time. So it's not just really one thing, it's kind of this spectrum of behaviors that we've been talking about, that a little bit of each of those contribute to unhealthy life as people age.
Okay. Oops. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. And Have Another Latte has a comment and a question. I worry about all the chemicals in our environments. Many of them act like hormones, and they can definitely be psychoactive. And Dr. Vic, what do you think?
I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think we're just getting our hands around that problem. For example, the plastics that are so omnipresent in our society. I just reviewed some research on testosterone in men. And so if you cook, like I throw my leftovers in a plastic container, okay? And I've got some good BPA-free ones and so forth. But you shouldn't cook in plastic containers because that plastic drives into the food, and those plastics and some of the chemicals in them block the way that hormones are expressed in our body, both as Dr. Watson is going to talk about the estrogenizing as well as the testosterone side of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one test I can do that will tell people if they're probably low in testosterone, and it's called the CYCYP. That is, I tell men, okay, you look down, and can you see your fill in the blank? And if you can't, then your gut is got too much visceral fat, and that visceral fat in men actually acts as an estrogenizer. So your belly may be turning you into a girl, and also may affect your sexual function. And so that's another factor on hormonal balance.
So what's your excuse for us women?
What can they say? What can they say? That was a testosterone study. I'm not going to come up with that one. I'll get into trouble over here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? All right. I believe that's going to conclude our talk for today. Thanks everyone for coming. And again, if you haven't seen Old Red, go across the campus and take a look. Be sure and check out the art exhibit. It's a great campus to explore. There's so many awesome things. So Teresa, Ann will be there for any other questions you have about what we're doing. Ellen is in the back, and thank you so much, Dr. Vic. You were awesome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.